Hello students, welcome to Boundless Maths, your trusted space for both maths and science. In today's video, we are going to cover the chapter Control and Coordination from Class X CBSE Science syllabus. I'll be covering the content from my Class X Science notes authored by me specifically to make NCERT content easy to understand and learn. If you want a copy of your science notes, you can visit my website www.boundlessmaths.com. So let's get started. What do we understand by the terms control and coordination? First, let's come to control. Control means controlling the organs or the organ systems. So it is the brain that controls various parts of our body to make them work properly. That is control. Now what is coordination? Coordination means controlling as well as coordinating across various organs and organ systems to make the body respond effectively in response to changes in the environment. So that means why do we need that coordination? To maintain the balance between the environmental factors and body functions. This is the reason why we need the control and coordination system in our body. Now, how do we achieve this coordination? There are two ways. First is the nervous system and the second is the endocrine system. So these nervous system and endocrine system both are needed and both work in different situations to make that coordination possible. So we'll go into the details of both the systems, but first let's get started with the nervous system. So what is the function of the nervous system and how it works? Nervous system receives information from the environment, the first function of the nervous system. Next, it receives information from various body parts through sensory nerves or our sense organs, or maybe otherwise also from various body parts. It receives all kind of information through the neurons, and then it makes the body to act accordingly through muscles and glands. So these are the two ways in which the nervous system makes the body respond to changes in the environment through muscles and glands, right? Now let's understand first a few keywords before we get into the details of how the nervous system works. The first one is stimulus. What is stimulus? Stimulus is any change in the environment due to which the organism needs to respond, right? Next word is response. What is response? The reaction of the body in response to the stimulus. For example, we withdraw our hand on touching something very hot, or maybe if some dust gets into our eyes, the eyes start watering or we start blinking our eyes so that the dust particle can move out. So that is response, how the body is responding to that change in the environment. Next is coordination. Coordination means working together of the various organs of the body of an organism in a proper manner to produce the appropriate reaction. So this is coordination. So we are going to get into the details of how this coordination is achieved by the nervous system. Now there are certain receptors in our body that capture the changes in the environment. This is through the sensory organs or the 5 senses. You must have learnt earlier also in lower grades. We have 5 sense organs, and these sense organs, they have sensory nerves that convey signals or changes in the environment. They sense them and convey them to the brain, right? So they are specialized nerve cells that detect information from the environment and send it to the brain. So what are the different types of receptors? First one is phonoreceptors. Phonoreceptors is phonetics. It is related to the word phonetics. Phono means sound. So phonoreceptors capture information through the ear, specifically related to hearing of different sounds or maintaining balance of the body. So it is not just hearing but also maintaining balance of the body. Both these environmental changes are captured by the phonoreceptors present in our ear. Second is the photoreceptors. Photon word is related to light. Yes. So that means any information captured through the eyes is done through the photoreceptors. So it is the visual stimulus that brings about changes in the body. Next is thermoreceptors. Now thermo word definitely means temperature, but it refers to the receptors that together capture pain, touch and changes in temperature or maybe heat or cold. So these are thermoreceptors. They are present throughout our skin. Next is olfactory receptors. You must have learnt in one of the previous chapters also olfactory indicators. Or what is olfactory? Olfactory means related to smell. So olfactory receptors are present in our nose and their function is to detect smell, different smells, maybe fragrance, maybe bad smell, good smell, whatever you call. So smell detection is done by the olfactory receptors. Now the last one, that is gustatory receptors. These are related to tongue and they help in detecting taste, right? So we understood what are the different types of receptors: phonoreceptors, photoreceptors, thermoreceptors, olfactory and gustatory receptors. So it is very important to learn what are these receptors called, especially the thermoreceptors, because it is not just the temperature but also the feeling of pain, touch along with heat and cold, right? Now what is a neuron? What is the structure of neuron? What are the functions of different parts of the neuron and how it works? Let's get into it. So what is a neuron? It is a nerve fiber, or just a single nerve cell is called a neuron. So it is the structural and functional unit of the nervous system. These neurons, they carry electrical impulses from the sensory organs to the brain or the spinal cord, and then again back from there to the muscles and glands. So the function is to process and transmit information in the form of electrical impulses. Yes. So the shape of the neuron is determined by the kind of work it is doing. So normally in general all neurons have an elongated this kind of shape, where there is a cyton or the cell body with the nucleus in the center. There are dendrites outside the cyton and there is an elongated axon, and in the end there are nerve endings. Now how these nerve impulses travel in our body? The junction of two nerve cells is called, I might have another nerve cell that is in starting here, where the nerve endings are there for this one, right? So this junction of two nerve cells is called synapse. Now how the neurons work? They capture signals from the synapse by capturing certain chemicals. And when the dendrites capture these signals, chemicals from the synaptic fluid, they convert these chemicals into electrical impulses. So within the body of the neuron, it is the electrical impulse that is traveling from the dendrites through the axon till the nerve endings. Now once these electrical impulses, they reach the nerve endings, they are again converted back into chemicals, and these chemicals are released in the synaptic fluid present at the synaptic junction. These chemicals are known as neurotransmitters. So across neurons, it is the neurotransmitters that help in exchange of information. Neurotransmitters are the chemicals present in the synaptic fluid present at the synapse or the junction of two nerve cells, and within the nerve cell information is conveyed only in the form of electrical impulse. So it is the electrical impulse that is traveling throughout the body of the neuron, but outside the body it is the chemicals that are called neurotransmitters at the synapse, right? Now what are the different parts and what are their functions? We understood that dendrites, they are the branch structures that receive messages from other neurons in the form of chemicals. They receive information, their function is to receive information. Next is the cyton and the axon. So cyton is the cell body, axon is the elongated part that conducts electrical impulses. Within the neuron, information is passed in the form of only electrical impulses. So axon transmits electrical signals from the cell body to the nerve endings. Now what is the function of synapse? What is synapse? It is a point of contact between two nerve cells where the dendrites of one neuron and the nerve endings of another neuron, they meet, right? So that chemicals can be exchanged across them through the synaptic fluid present at the junction. Now let's come to very important concept of what is reflex action. So we understood how a neuron, a single neuron would work by capturing chemicals and then transmitting as electrical signals and then releasing chemicals back into the synapse, right? Now let's look at what is reflex action. Reflex action is an automatic response of the body in response to any changes or any stimulus from the environment. For example, blinking of eyes, when you come across very bright light entering your eyes, or maybe withdrawing of hands when you touch something very hot or cold, right? Now what is reflex arc? Please understand this word arc. It is a pathway. What is it? It is a pathway. Pathway is the entire flow, entire process that happens, that has to be captured when you are explaining this pathway. So what is pathway? It is the pathway taken by nerve impulses in a reflex action. So reflex, I already told you what is a reflex action. Reflex action is automatic response to a stimulus. So a stimulus is always accompanied by a response. They always exist in pairs. So what is reflex arc? Reflex arc means the pathway that is taken by the nerve impulses in any reflex action. So basically it is the stimulus leading to a response. The entire pathway that happens in our body through nerve impulses is called reflex arc. So this pathway word is very important when you are writing what is reflex arc, right? Now what is the word voluntary mean? Voluntary means something that is under your control, and involuntary is something that is not in your control but it is controlled by the brain. Definitely it is in control, but it is controlled by the brain, but you cannot voluntarily or you cannot on your own control that thing. For example, the heartbeat. You cannot control the heartbeat, what is the heartbeat and how your heart is working. It is controlled by the brain, not by your will, right? But if you want to move or not, you want to stand or not, you want to sit, you want to write, you want to speak, all these are voluntary actions. So now let's look at how the reflex mechanism works. So it starts from the receptor organ, usually which is skin. It could be any other sense organ also, not just skin. So it starts from the receptor organ. The stimulus is sensed by this receptor organ, and through the sensory nerves this information reaches the spinal cord, right? So the information is captured by the receptor organ through sensory nerves, and these sensory nerves relay the information to the spinal cord. From the spinal cord, certain motor nerves, they are triggered to bring about a change in the effector organ, that is the muscles. Motor word is normally related to muscles. So motor nerves are the nerves that control the working of the muscles, which is normally the effector organ in case of an reflex arc pathway. So from the receptor, the entire information goes to the effector so that the hand is withdrawn from that hot object, right? Now what happens is that, again I will just repeat that, it involves a receptor organ that senses the change in the environment or something hot being touched. Then the sensory information is passed to the spinal cord. Now it is not going to the brain, and then the brain is going to think what should I do, and then reply back and then make the hand move. Because if it takes that much time, your hand will be burnt by that time. So that means it is like a shortcut that comes back from the spinal cord itself rather than going to the brain, covering the entire pathway and then the brain deciding what to do. Even though whenever any reflex arc takes place or reflex action takes place, the information is conveyed to the brain also, so that it is stored in the memory of the brain for future use. For example, if you touch something hot for the first time, if a child or a small baby touches something hot for the first time, even though the reflex arc is the shortcut and it makes the hand move away, but this information is stored in the brain, and if the child next time sees something, he can sense it is hot, the child will not touch it because the brain has registered that it is going to harm me, right? So the information is conveyed to the brain parallelly, but the shortcut is through the spinal cord only. It doesn't have to go to the brain and take the entire time. So the message travels out of the spinal cord along with a motor neuron to the effector organ, that is a muscle or a gland. It could be a gland also. For example, we have tear glands in our eyes, and when some dust goes into our eyes, the tear glands, our eyes start to water. So it is the glands in the eyes that get activated, right? So that is the effector organ. So this entire process is called reflex arc. Now it is a very common question. When you get a question on reflex arc, what all you should write? First is you should write the definition properly, including the word pathway. So it is a pathway. You will not write it is a process or it is something that happens. Don't use any vague or any generic words. You have to write it is a pathway. It is a pathway that is taken by the nerve impulses in an reflex action. And then you can even describe what is a reflex action. It is an automatic response to changes in the environment, right? Once you have written the definition, this is something very important you should write. Even if you cannot draw this in, hand and the spinal cord, at least write this much information, draw this diagram and then explain how it works. So the explanation has to be accompanied by this diagram, right? Next is, what are the limitations of these electrical impulses? So this nervous system basically works in the form of neurons and electrical impulses traveling through them. Now, do they have certain limitations? Yes, of course. These nerve cells are not present throughout our body. They are present majorly in our sensory organs, muscles, glands, but there might be certain organs where they are not present. So these nerve cells cannot capture information from the parts of the body where there are no nerve cells. Secondly, as you have seen, nerve cells carry information in the form of electrical impulses. So unless one message has been captured and relayed completely to the next neuron, this nerve cell is not going to capture more information. So it makes the process sequential. So the response to multiple stimuli is difficult. The neurons, they capture one piece of information, relay it completely to the next neuron and then capture the next. So multiple responses at times, what we need in our body, they are difficult to be coordinated by the nervous system, right? Now what does the nervous system mainly consist of? The nervous system consists of the central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, and the third one is the autonomous nervous system. So autonomous nervous system is not in our syllabus right now, so we will be focusing more on the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So peripheral nervous system consists of cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Please remember, the word cranial is related to brain, cranium. So these nerves, they arise from the brain, and spinal nerves, they arise from the spinal cord. So these are two keywords that you might again get in the form of maybe MCQs. What are cranial nerves? Nerves that arise from the brain. Please don't write nerves that reach the brain. So they might be, just sensory nerves. Now what is the central nervous system? Central nervous system mainly consists of the brain and the spinal cord together. So it is not just the brain that is the central part of our body, it is the spinal cord also, because the spinal cord is controlling all the reflex actions. So the brain and spinal cord together are called are covered under central nervous system. What are the parts of the brain? Forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. Now let's look at the structure of the brain. Now this entire brain is captured in a cavity called cranium or the skull, right? So this cranium or skull is a very hard bone that protects our brain inside it. The brain is very delicate, and between this cranium and the brain there is a fluid called cerebrospinal fluid that provides the cushioning to protect the brain in case of any kind of impact on the skull. So the function of this cerebrospinal fluid is to protect the soft brain and the spinal cord from any kind of impact on the skull, external impact, right? So the cranium and the cerebrospinal fluid are there for the protection of the brain. Let's get into what is the brain, what are the parts of the brain. So the first part that we have seen is called forebrain or the cerebrum. So the first part is cerebrum. Second one is midbrain. Midbrain is here in the center. And then we have hindbrain. This is the third part of the brain. Hindbrain consists of pons, medulla. You can see this stick-like structure here. And this structure, this is called cerebellum. So the hindbrain has three parts, pons, medulla and cerebellum, and overall the brain has three parts, cerebrum, midbrain, hindbrain. Hindbrain has three parts, pons, medulla, cerebellum, right? So you understand the structure of this brain now, and this is attached to the spinal cord. The hindbrain is attached to the spinal cord. So these are the main parts, three parts of the brain, and now let's look at what are the functions of these three parts. So forebrain is the most complex part of the brain where all the information is stored, all the information processing centers are there, all the memory is part of the cerebrum. So all our thinking, thought process, all our information centers, everything is there in the cerebrum or the forebrain. So it is the thinking part of the brain. it controls voluntary actions through motor nerves, and then it stores information. All the memory is there in the cerebrum. Then it also has the center associated with hunger, all the feeling of fullness when you eat too much of food or when you are very hungry. So that center for processing that hunger feeling is also there in the cerebrum. Next is it receives sensory impulses from various body parts, integrates them and separate areas of the forebrain that are specialized for basic senses like hearing, smell, sight and so on, right. So these are the functions of the forebrain. Now let's come to midbrain. Midbrain is the connection between the forebrain and the hindbrain, right. So it is the part of the central nervous system that controls vision, hearing, motor control, sleep-wake arousal, alertness and temperature regulation. Out of all these, temperature regulation is very important because it is there, many times it is there in the questions, which part of the brain controls the temperature. So temperature regulation is done by the midbrain. This is one of the very important functions of the midbrain apart from vision, hearing, motor, sleep, wake arousal. So whatever keywords are here in bold, whatever keywords I am underlining, these are very important whenever you are writing the functions of forebrain or the midbrain or even the hindbrain. Now what is hindbrain? It consists of cerebellum, medulla and pons. We have just seen the structure of hindbrain, all the three. What is the function of cerebellum? Maintains posture and balance of the body. Again, balance of the body is very, very, very important. You might get an indirect question. Somebody is swimming and trying to maintain balance of the body, or maybe a child is struggling to balance the bicycle while riding a bicycle. So which part of the brain is not working properly? It is the hindbrain, and in fact as part of hindbrain, it is more specifically it is cerebellum. So cerebellum is responsible for maintaining balance of the body, and it controls other body movements also, right. Medulla controls the involuntary actions. For example, blood pressure, salivation and vomiting. Again, blood pressure, salivation and vomiting are the three specific keywords mentioned in your NCERT textbook. So these have to be remembered. Blood pressure, salivation and vomiting are controlled by medulla. Which part of the brain controls vomiting? Medulla. Which part of the brain controls blood pressure? Medulla. Salivation? Medulla again, right? Now what is the function of pons? Involuntary actions and regulation of respiration. Again, respiration is very important when it comes to pons. P can be just changed with a slanting line and it becomes R. So this is how you can remember. Pons regulates respiration. PR, friends. So pons regulates respiration and involuntary actions. So basically involuntary actions are taken care of by the hindbrain, whereas voluntary actions are taken care of by the forebrain. So this part of the functions of parts of the brain is very, very important, and you should remember all the keywords or the words written in bold here whenever it comes to functions of the brain. This is a very important part of this chapter. Now we have already spoken about peripheral nervous system, how it works, how the neurons, they convey signals. So how the communication happens between the central nervous system and other parts of the body, it is through the neurons or the nerve cells. And we have also seen what are the limitations of the communication that is happening through the nervous system. First is, nervous system does not have nerves in all parts of the body. So some parts of the body cannot be controlled by the nervous system. Secondly, the processing of messages done by the nervous system, it is sequential. Unless one message is completely relayed and transmitted to the next neuron, the next message is not going to get captured. So because of these two limitations, we have the endocrine system, right? Now what is endocrine system? It mainly refers to the hormones secreted by various glands in our body. Now what are these hormones? What do you mean by hormones? Hormones are chemical substances. At times, there is a question, what are hormones, and children write hormones is something. Don't write something. It is a chemical substance secreted by the endocrine glands. Now there are two types of glands, endocrine and exocrine. So exocrine glands, they secrete and release their secretions in ducts. For example, in the nutrition part of life process chapter, we read about liver also. It releases that bile juice into the gallbladder. So that is an exocrine gland. It is secreting something and that is getting collected in a duct. But what are endocrine glands? They release their secretions directly into the bloodstream without storing them anywhere temporarily, right? So these glands are called endocrine glands that release their hormones or they release the chemical substances directly into the blood. What are endocrine glands? They are ductless glands that secrete hormones or the chemical messengers which carry messages through the bloodstream. So they release hormones into the bloodstream. These glands control growth, development, metabolism, reproduction. Endocrine glands secrete hormones in response to external as well as internal stimuli. The nervous system was mainly responding to the external changes in the environment. The sensory organs, they detect external changes and convey it to the brain or the spinal cord. But this also works with the internal organs, internal stimuli. We'll just see what kind of hormones or glands are included in the endocrine system. Now let's look at what are the different glands. If you look at this table, the first gland is the pituitary gland. Where is it located? It is located here, besides the midbrain and hindbrain side of that, right? So pituitary gland, this is the master gland. Pituitary gland is the master gland of our entire body. Why we call it a master gland? Because it releases certain hormones that control the working of other hormones also. It is releasing its own hormones also that are doing certain work, and it is releasing more hormones also that are regulating the working of other hormones in the body. So that's why pituitary gland is called master gland. And I think you must have read about this in the in low grades also, right? So pituitary gland is present in the midbrain, and the hormone released by pituitary gland is growth hormone. So as the word tells you, it is responsible for growth. Deficiency of this growth hormone causes dwarfism or short-heightedness. So people who are very short, they don't have, they are not tall, so they don't have enough growth hormone in their body, right? Next is thyroid. What is the location of thyroid gland? In the neck. Thyroid and parathyroid. This butterfly-like structure in your neck. This is where you have the thyroid and the parathyroid glands, right? So what is the function of this thyroid gland? It releases a hormone called thyroxine that controls the metabolism and brings about balanced growth. Deficiency of thyroxine causes goiter. What is goiter? This thyroid gland, it swells up and it doesn't work properly, so it is actually impacting the metabolism rate of the body. So when you eat your food and you are still feeling very lethargic, very lazy, and you don't have enough energy even after eating enough, that means something is wrong with the metabolism. And why it is wrong? Because your thyroid gland might not be working properly, even though there could be other factors also, but this is one of the factors that leads to wrong metabolism rate, right? So the working of the thyroid gland is, it releases thyroxine that controls the metabolism rate. Now for working of thyroid, we need iodized salt. Iodized salt is necessary because thyroid gland needs iodine to make thyroxine. So it is needed for the metabolism or digestion of carbohydrates, fats, proteins in our body. So when our food is not getting digested properly and we feel lethargic, lazy, it is actually because of the malfunctioning of the thyroid gland. There could be other reasons, but don't ignore this reason if you are feeling that. Get your thyroid levels checked. Next is parathyroid. It is located along with the thyroid gland in the neck only, and the function is to control calcium balance of the body. This is very important, which hormone or which gland controls the calcium balance of the body. Some children, start writing here vitamin D, calcium, but you have to write parathormone secreted by parathyroid gland. Which gland or which hormone controls the calcium balance of the body is the parathormone, and the gland is parathyroid gland. Next is the adrenal gland, located just above the kidneys. So these two are adrenal glands. Adrenaline is the hormone, name of the hormone. Look at the spelling, adrenal and adrenaline. So don't write wrong spellings. Adrenal is the name of the gland. Adrenaline is the name of the hormone. This is a fight or flight hormone that prepares the body for emergency situations. For example, you are going on a safari and suddenly you see a lion in front of you. You will start sweating, BP might become very high, and your eyes will open wide and your muscles will get activated to an extent that you will run the fastest ever in your life. You will even beat any marathon runner, right? So from where you got that energy into your muscles, it was all because of the working of the adrenaline hormone that helped you to fly. Fly means go away. So either you fight with the lion or you go away. What will you choose? Definitely you will choose to go away. So this flight response of the body, making your muscles that active that you can run very fast, is the working of the adrenaline hormone secreted by the adrenal gland. Okay. Next is the pancreas. Again we have studied about pancreas during the nutrition chapter also. So the pancreas, they regulate the glucose level in the blood by secreting a hormone called insulin. So insulin is the name of the hormone that is regulating the amount of glucose in the bloodstream. And if there is not enough insulin being generated by the pancreas, then that condition is called diabetes, when the sugar level in the blood increases beyond a limit because of lesser insulin being produced by the pancreas, right? Next we have the testes and ovaries. These are testes in the male and ovaries are present in the females. The hormones released by testes is testosterone, and ovaries, they have estrogen and progesterone. So these both these glands are present in the lower abdomen. They control growth and development of the female and the male reproductive systems, right? So out of all these, I will say, pancreas is very important, regulation of blood sugar level. Thyroid is very important from examination point of view, and functioning of parathyroid gland, parathyroid, because it is just one statement hidden somewhere in your NCERT and that gets skipped off. So the parathyroid gland controls the calcium level of the body. Thyroid gland controls the metabolism rate. Deficiency of thyroid is goiter. Pancreas, they release insulin, name of the hormone is very important, that controls the glucose level, and deficiency disease is diabetes. Now let's look at the feedback mechanism, how this coordination or control is actually done by the endocrine system. What is the feedback? When something becomes too much or too less, it gives a feedback or a message back that something is going on, right? So in our body also there is an automatic feedback system that keeps on maintaining the level of different hormones in the bloodstream. For example, the glucose level in the blood rises. For any reason, the glucose level has already increased. So the pancreas, they will release more insulin to consume that glucose or to absorb that glucose. So either you store this glucose or you utilize it somehow because the glucose level is increasing in the blood. So that means pancreas, they are going to secrete more insulin. Now this extra insulin is going to utilize or store the glucose present in the blood, bringing down the level of glucose. So now the glucose level is going down because of more insulin that has been produced by the pancreas, and when the glucose level falls in the blood below a certain limit, it again tells pancreas to stop releasing more insulin, otherwise it will go even more down. So you stop releasing more insulin, let it be very normal now, the glucose level has been restored to a normal range, right? So this is called the feedback mechanism that works in our body, and it is not just for this hormone but for other hormones also. If the level of certain substances in our body, something like glucose in this case, or maybe something else, maybe calcium in the case of parathyroid. So if the level of certain substances becomes lesser or more than a certain limit, the body has its own feedback mechanism to take care of it, right? So this feedback mechanism is very important, especially with respect to release of insulin. So in case you get a question on the feedback mechanism, draw this diagram. This diagram is very important again. Draw this diagram and then explain and then write whatever you want to write, right? Now we have gone through both the nervous system and the endocrine system, so we understand how they work, and now let's look at the basic differences, or overall what are the differences between the two systems. Nervous system consists of brain, spinal cord and a network of nerves. Yes, we have seen all these three parts. Endocrine system consists of a set of glands, right? What is the second difference? Nervous system works through electrochemical pulses. Electric pulses within the neuron and chemicals at the synapse. Signals are transmitted through hormones in the endocrine system. So the endocrine system has hormones for conveying messages. Neurons are used to transmit signals. Here the circulatory system or the bloodstream is used to transmit the signal. Signal transmission is very fast. The nerve impulses, electrical impulses are very fast, whereas some hormones might take some time to reach the target organ and then be effective, right? So this process is a little slower, even though it can work simultaneously on multiple organs. For example, I told you adrenaline gland. When you see a line in front of you, heartbeat also changes, sweating also changes, and your muscles also get activated. So all these are working together. So this is one of the advantage of the endocrine system. The neurons are interconnected to form electrical impulses, and the organs are not connected. Like in this example, the heart is not connected to my sweat glands, but they are working together. It is not connected to my muscles, but they are working together. So individual glands release individual hormones, and all the hormones also are individual. They are separate organs, separate parts, and they release their hormones into the bloodstream. So these are the differences between the two systems in case you need to write, and you can even include the limitations that we have talked about. Nervous system relays messages sequentially, and the endocrine system, that it can work simultaneously on multiple organs, right? Now let's come to the next part of this chapter, that is the coordination in plants. We have covered coordination in animals, both the endocrine system and the nervous system. Now we'll move to coordination in plants. Okay. Now in plants we have two types of movements. First is the tropic movements, second is the nastic movements. What are tropic movements? They are directional movements. What are these? They are directional movements. Again, this keyword is very important. Tropic movements are directional movements in response to stimulus. The way we have certain receptors, photoreceptors, phonoreceptors, olfactory receptors, these plants also respond to changes in the environment, right? So in response to stimulus, these are directional movements that are happening in the plant. They are called tropic movements. Next is nastic movements. They are immediate response to stimulus. For example, wilting or drooping of leaves of touch me not plant. As soon as you touch it, all the leaves, they start falling down, they start drooping. So that is an instantaneous response to external stimulus. It is not in response to, it is not a directional response in response to a stimulus, but it is an instant immediate response. So that is called nastic movement. It is not dependent on the growth of the plant. The tropic movement may be dependent on the growth of the plant. For example, the sunflower being directed towards sunlight, or maybe a climber winding around a support. So these are growth movements, whereas nastic movements are immediate movements irrespective of the growth of the plant, right? Now let's look at what are the different types of tropic movements. The first one is again phototropism. Photo word means light. So the movement towards light is called phototropism. Geotropism, movement towards gravity. Roots always tend to grow towards gravity. So that is geotropism. Chemotropism. Chemo means chemicals. So what are the chemicals? For example, the movement of growth, the growth of the pollen tube towards the ovule while fertilization needs to take place. So this growth of the pollen tube inside the style and then reaching the ovary is an example of chemotropism towards certain chemicals or certain parts of the plant, right? Hydrotropism. Hydro word is for water. So movement towards water is called hydrotropism. Out of all these, chemotropism is again very important. Along with the example, you should be able to explain what is chemotropism. It is the movement towards chemicals. For example, the growth of pollen tube towards the ovule is an example of chemotropism. So always remember this is very, very important here out of all 4 of them, right? Now let's come back again to tropic movements. These are the directional movements in response to stimulus. For example, tendrils. They are sensitive to touch. The part of the tendril in contact with the supporting object does not grow as rapidly. For example, there is a supporting rod and there is a climber growing around this supporting rod. So this climber, how it is going to grow? It is going to wind itself something like this, right? So what is happening is the part of the climber that is in contact with the support, it will grow lesser, but the part of the this climber stem that is outside will grow more so that it can turn around that support, right? So this is a tropic movement because it is related to the growth of the plant in that way. The part that is in contact with the support is growing lesser, but the part that is outside is growing more. It is again because of the release of certain hormones. We are going to look at what hormones are released in plants. So the growth of the releasing of these hormones, it triggers more growth towards the part that is exposed to light, whereas the part that is not exposed to light and is touching the support grows lesser. So that's how the tendrils or the stems they wind around the support system, right? Nastic movements, as we just saw, touch me not plant shows nastic movements. Such movements are independent of the growth because it is not a growth movement, right? And there are no electrical signals that are there, telling the entire plant that something has been touched. So how does it work? How all the leaves they droop down together. So this actually is conveyed in the form of changing the size of the cells through osmosis or taking in more water or releasing more water. So the cells of the plant, they change their size and shape by releasing water or by taking in more water. This is how they conduct that information to all the leaves. The information is conveyed to different parts of the plant by in response to the stimulus by change in their shape and size. How it is relayed? By change in the shape and size of the cell. You might get an assertion reason kind of question from this part, so please understand this. How the relaying of information happens in a touch me not plant or in plants in general. The information is conveyed by changing the shape and size of the cells. There are no specialized neurons for conducting, but these messages are conducted by changing the shape and size of the cell by regulating the amount of water in them. So either the cell is going to absorb more water or it is going to lose water and then respond to the stimulus, right? Now again, hormones are certain chemicals that help to coordinate growth and development responses in the environment. We have already seen what are hormones. These are the hormones that are present in the plants. The first one is auxin. It is a plant hormone produced in the stem tip that promotes cell elongation. So cell elongation is the key word. Wherever you see the word cell elongation, the hormone responsible is auxin. So auxin is a growth hormone responsible for elongation of cells. So cell elongation is the key word. I am repeating again. Always remember, cell elongation is associated with release of auxin. Next is gibberellin. This also regulates growth. Both these hormones, they regulate growth of the plant. But it also helps in other development processes including germination, flowering, enzyme induction, leaf and fruit senescence, very important. Senescence means falling off. So falling off of matured leaves and fruits is regulated by the release of gibberellin hormone, right? So both are responsible for growth, but senescence of leaf and fruit is controlled by gibberellin, not auxin, and elongation comes for auxin. Next is cytokinin. Cytokinin, it is a kind of phytohormone. Phyto means responding to light. That promotes cell division or cytokinesis. Cytokinesis is division of a cell. So this is controlled by cytokinin. They are involved primarily in cell growth, differentiation, but also affect apical dominance, bud growth, leaf senescence. So again these keywords have to be kept in mind when you are attempting questions. Cytokinin is responsible for areas where you have extensive growth or extensive cell division. For example, bud growth, cell growth, differentiation, apical dominance, all these are the words associated with cytokinin. Now opposite to all these three is abscisic acid. It inhibits growth. It causes wilting of leaves. It is a stress hormone in the plants. And it promotes closing of stomata so that more and more water is not lost. So it is a kind of stress hormone that causes falling down of leaves, closing of stomata, it stops the growth of the plant. So these hormones are very important. You should know what is the function of which hormone in the plants so that you can attempt the questions properly. And I have already told you the keywords are cell elongation, leaf and fruit senescence, then cell division here. Cell division is cytokinin, cell division, both starting with CC. Abscisic acid is the only hormone that inhibits growth in plants. So this is all that we have in this chapter for control and coordination. I hope you have understood the basic concept of the entire chapter, nervous system, how it works, endocrine system, what are the hormones, what are the glands, and then the control and coordination in plants also. If you understood the chapter nicely, if it is actually helpful to you, please don't forget to like and subscribe to Boundless Maths. And in the comments, if you have still have any doubts, if you still have any questions, or if you want me to take up any topic or any chapter in my next video, please share in the comments below so that I can help you, right? So till then, keep learning, keep growing. See you.